What's up guys, it's MTG Matt for you, and today we're going to look at the spoiler cards or preview cards from Kaldheim from January 7th and a few I had missed from January 6th. And we're going to do it a bit of a different way this time. I'm going to discuss the cards with you as regularly and give my opinion about them. And then let's just change the browser view here. They're actually going to put them here into a tier list. Because I thought, when we are already evaluating the cards, why not go ahead and rank them accordingly? So I've got 5 tiers here, which I defined the following way. So cards I put in the upper category are cards that are going to see play in tier 1 decks or are going to be meta defining. Cards I'm going to put into the second category is cards that will see frequent play in tier 1 and tier 2 decks. Cards in the third category will see play in tier 3 decks, and cards in the fourth category will see some play or rare play in jank and low tier decks, and then cards in the lowest category are going to see zero play in constructed. So as you can see, all these tiers refer to constructed. They don't evaluate the cards based on draft or anything. This is only about constructed. So that's the plan right here. So let's jump right into those cards and we're going to go through them one by one. Actually, I can close this down. So first one, we got Behold the Multiverse. Let me actually zoom in here. Yeah, that seems fine. Okay, we got Behold the Multiverse. It's a 4-mana instant in blue with the effect of scry 2, then draw 2 cards. And foretell for 1 in the blue. So you can pay 2 on your turn. And then cast this card on later turn for 1 in the blue. So I think this card can definitely see play. Just on face value, 4 mana, instant scry 2, then draw 2 cards is pretty solid. But this card also just benefits from the foretell mechanic because you can, if you're in a control deck, you can pay the 2 on your second turn to do nothing, basically. And then later, when you need to refill your hand, you can just pay 2 mana to scry 2 and then draw 2 cards. And first scrying 2 and then drawing 2 cards is actually a big deal. It's a lot better than just drawing 2 cards. So I think this card is going to see play, and I can actually see this card be quite up there. I would put it in the second category. And let me actually also zoom in here a bit. I think that's better. I would put it in the second category. I can definitely see this being played in like tier 1, tier 2 control decks. So I think this card is very good actually. Next up we got Augury Raven. It's a 4-mana 3/3 bird with flying and foretell 1 in the blue. This might be playable in draft. In construct, it's going to 0 play. Pretty straightforward. Alright, next up we got a Glimpse the Cosmos. 2-mana sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Okay, so it's an anticipate at sorcery speed. As long as you control Giant, you may cast Glimpse the Cosmos from your graveyard by paying blue rather than paying its mana cost. If you cast Glimpse the Cosmos this way and it would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. So, if there is going to be a viable blue Giants deck, I assume from this card that it's going to be like, is it spellslingy in a way? Because we've also seen a 2-mana saga that refers to Giants, which is in Izzet colors, and it seems like the Giants will be in the Izzet colors, obviously, in red and blue, and that they will have some synergies with sorceries or instants. So, when we go to our tier list, I would say about this card that I assume that these kind of Giants decks, they might be tier 3 decks, right? And if those Giant tribal decks see play, then I would expect this card to be in there because there's actually a lot of value. So first you got this Anticipate effect, which is strictly worse than Anticipate because Anticipate is an instant. This is a sorcery. However, you can recast it from your graveyard for 1 blue mana, so you get a discount. Which means for 3 mana, you look at the top 3 cards of the library twice and draw 2 cards. That's already very good. But it's even better than that because the fact that you play this from your graveyard, so you replay it, makes it so that this card in a way is 2 cards. So you have a lot of value. And because of that, and because I assume that Izzet Giants is going to be a tier 3 deck, I would put this in the tier 3 category here. Where do we have the card? Wait, what does it look like? Glimpse the Cosmos. Did I forget to put it in? No, it's here. So this could be like a tier 3 card. Next up, we got Reflections of Litjara. It's 4 in the blue for an enchantment. As Reflections of Litjara enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Whenever you cast a spell of the chosen type, copy that spell. So which means a copy of a permanent spell becomes a token. So this card sounds super fun. The thing about this card is obviously that you pay 5 mana to do nothing a turn. It's a bit like Shark Typhoon in that regard. With Shark Typhoon, you also pay 6 mana to do nothing that turn. So that's the big downside. I think where the first thing that comes to my mind with this card is an Elf Ball deck. What I could see being played is Elf Tribal seems to be, or is going to be, a theme in this expansion. And we don't know yet how good Elf Tribal is going to be, because I actually made the effort to look up all the elves in Standard right now, and first, there are not a lot of them, secondly, most of them are pretty terrible. So Kaldheim needs to really step up the elf game in order to make Elf Ball viable. But if Elf Ball is viable, I could see this card being played in there. You know, you could play your elves, which are going to be in green and black colors, as it seems in this expansion. And then you just splash blue, which is pretty easy these days because of the dual modal land cards. By pretty easy, I mean, obviously first, you can have blue in your deck, while also getting the actual colors that you want. But those dual modal lands, you don't sacrifice tempo because they come into play on tap. So that's a huge deal for an aggro elf creature-based deck. And, well, if there is a nice elf tribal deck, and because we don't know a lot yet, I would put elf tribal in like tier 3. I could see like 2 copies of this in the deck, you know, just splash blue for this card. Because also elves usually have a really easy time to generate a lot of mana. So it might not be that hard to, you know, play this 5 mana enchantment and then on the same turn, let's say, cast a 2 mana elf. And then this 2 mana elf gets copied, so that's a lot of value already. And then the following turns you just really get going. So I don't think this card is going to be meta defined or anything, but I can definitely see this being played in Elf Ball deck, so I would put it in like the tier 3 category. And apart from that, it's just really, really cool. Okay, next up, oh boy, this is a juicy one. Goldspan Dragon. 5 mana 4/4 with flying and haste. And whenever Goldspan Dragon attacks or becomes the target of a spell, create a treasure token. And treasures you control have tap, sacrifice artifact, add 2 mana of any one color. So there's a lot of going on in this, on this card. First off, on face value is just a 5 mana 4/4 with flying and haste, which is absolutely playable, absolutely decent. We've seen cards like this being played in Standard before. For example, this, I don't remember the name, is it right here? No, it's not. This Riotty type of dragon. And with the riot mechanic, it's a lot of play. And so that's already good. This can already go in like even red aggro decks, right? But it gets a lot better than that because the turn it comes down, it's basically guaranteed to create your treasure token. Because either you create a treasure token by attacking, or you cast the dragon and your opponent immediately removes it with an instant spell. But if so, he has to target Goldspan Dragon, also generating you a treasure token. So if this dies, this effectively a 4-mana 4/4 flying if haste, right? But if this doesn't die, it just generates you a treasure, which adds 2 mana of any one color instead of just 1. So at the usual play pattern where this survives, this is basically a 3-mana 4/4 flying, hey, which is just super good. And we've seen the treasure theme be a big theme in Kaldheim, also with the Dwarf Legendary creature at 2 mana that generates you treasures and lets you fetch dragons from your deck by sacrificing treasures. This will go right in this deck, I think. And then we have also Gadrock. I think Gadrock is the name. The 3 mana dragon from M21, which also synergizes treasures. So I think this card can fit into a lot of decks. It can also fit in like Genesis Ultimatum decks. It might not necessarily replace Terror of the Peaks, but it's definitely an excellent dragon. And you know, with all this treasure synergy going on, you can really build around this card and have treasures ready before you put this down, and then you just essentially double the mana you generate from treasures on that turn. And this allows for very spiky gameplay. So I would say Goldspan Dragon is probably a tier 1 card. I think this is a tier 1 card. It's very, very good. Next up, we got Glaciate. It's 2 and a green for a snow enchantment aura, enchant land. And enchant land becomes a snow land, and when enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional mana of any color. So the interesting thing about this card is that by playing this card and enchanting a non-snow land you control, you essentially get 2 snow permanents on the battlefield because the aura itself is a snow permanent, and then the land enchants becomes a snow permanent. So that might be relevant. However, if you want to play snow, I think you just run snowlands instead of playing this. And if you're interested about the mana ramp part of this, at 3 mana, just play a Cultivate, right? Cultivate gets you an extra land in play, draws you another land from your deck. So this just straight up better, and because of that, I'm going to predict that this is going to see 0 playing constructed. Where is our Glaciate? There it is. So 0 playing constructed. Next up, we got Giant's Amulet. It's 1 blue mana for an artifact equipment, and when Giant's Amulet enters spellfield, you may pay 3 and a blue. If you do, create a 4/4 blue giant wizard creature token, then attach Giant's Amulet to it. So this essentially has a kicker effect, right, for 3 and a blue. And the equipped creature gets +1/+1, has this creature has hexproof as long as it's untapped. Now, here's the thing, right? This creature has hexproof as long as it's untapped. That's exactly the text Paradise Druid used to have. Paradise Druid was a 2 mana elf from War of the Spark, which added 1 mana of any color and had hexproof as long as it was untapped. And the fact that it had hexproof was used to give it vigilance and then mutate onto it or put auras enchantments on it, because with hexproof it was very, very hard to remove, right? Now, do I think that this equipment is going to enable the same line of play? I don't think so, actually. We already have an equipment in standard right now, which is actually right here. It's Mirror Shield, which also lets you equip a creature and the creature just has hexproof. Arguably, this is just upfront. It's 1 mana more expensive, but Mirror Shield sees 0 play, and it's even in it's even colorless, so you can play in every color, while this is blue. And because of that, I think this is going to see 0 play. So let's put Giant's Amulet in the 0 play tier. Next up, we got Calamity Bearer. This card only gets spoiled beforehand, but we'll go over it once again. 4 mana in red for a Giant Berserker, and if a Giant source you control would deal damage to a permanent player, it deals double that damage to a permanent or player instead. Now, Bonecrusher Giant gets played in basically almost every deck that runs red, right? And Bonecrusher Giant is a giant. So, I would evaluate this card in 2 ways. First, would you just play this card in a non-giant tribal deck, just because Bonecrusher Giant is in the meta? If you think about it on face value, this is essentially a 4 mana 6/4, because it doubles its own damage, right? But I think at 4 mana is usually the turn where you want to use the mana to, attack with 2 creatures or more and then put down to your Endocleave. So I think this card is going to compete with those kinds of plays because these play patterns are very effective. And because of that, I don't think Calamity Bearer will find its way in just pure mono-red decks. That being said, in that giant tribal deck, this obviously fits in very well. And as I said before, I assume the giant tribal might be like tier 3, if at all, but we have not seen enough cards yet to really give an evaluation. So because of that, I would cautiously put Calamity Bearer in tier 3. I don't think it's going to be above that, and it might even go below that. But what Giant Tribal really is going to need is cheap, efficient giants, and just flavor-wise, I actually can't imagine that giants are going to be below 3 mana. So that might be a challenge, but I'm actually being optimistic here. I think with tier 3, it might be lower, but I'll leave it in tier 3 for the time being. Next up, we got Bretagard's Stronghold. It's actually Stronghold, not Stronghold. It's a land, and end of the battlefield tap. You can tap it for 1 green mana. And then you can pay green, double white, tap it, and sacrifice it to put a 1/1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures you control. They gain vigilance and lifelink until end of turn. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. I think this card is going to see absolutely 0 playing constructed. First off, it enters the battlefield tapped, so it's sacrificing a lot of tempo for a land that is not even dual colors, right? And then the sacrifice effect, so first off, the effect is permanent, right? Because like the 1/1 counters are permanent. So you get an effect on your creatures beyond the turn you activate this. And again, vigilance and lifelink until end of turn, which is very good. It really is, actually. Maybe you put one of these into your deck for whatever reason, but realistically speaking, I would say this is going to see 0 playing constructed. So in the most optimistic way, I would put this in like this tier, in tier 4, where it might see very, very rare play. I think that's optimistic, but more realistically, I would put it down here. But let's leave it just in tier 4 for the time being. But actually, I think it's going to see 0 playing constructed. But on the upside, what's cool is, this suggests that maybe there's going to be a cycle of these strongholds, so maybe the other ones are pretty juicy. Alright, next up we got Forging the Tyrite Sword. It's 3 mana in Boros colors for Enchantment Saga. Lower 1 and 2, create a treasure token. Okay. And then lower counter 3. Search your library for a card named Halvar, God of Battle, or an equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library. So, this card, the turn you play it, it's just 3 mana, basically do nothing because it just ramps you, and I assume you won't use the treasure that turn. And then the turn after, let's say you play this on turn 3, on turn 4 you untap. If you have your 4 lands, you play a land, and you get another treasure token, and you have 6 mana available, right? And so it's 6 mana. You could play your Drangspan you know, already getting more treasures and so on. But essentially, lore counters 1 or 2 are rather weak. And then the third one is pretty interesting. It can search up your Embercleave, for example, which is probably going to be what is going to be used for the most. And or you can straight up tutor your Halvar God of Battle, which is the dual modal god, which is also an equipment on the other side, right? The problem I see with this card is that this card is obviously meant to be played in an equipment deck. I mean, it says it right on the card, right? And in equipment decks, you want to be aggressive. So I don't really see how you can sacrifice your turn 3 for an upside later, because you want to be aggressive and pin down your opponent fast. Like, don't get me wrong, I think I really like the card and definitely want to try this out. This might allow for some play pattern where you predictably can get your Embercleave down, right? And maybe, we don't know yet, we haven't even seen half of the expansion yet. Maybe there's going to be some creature that allows you to get a treasure into play on turn 1. And if so, you could play this on turn 2 already. And in that magical Christmas land, this might really give you some tempo down the road. So this one is rather hard to evaluate. Cautiously, I would say this is not going to see a lot of play. Even in equipment decks, which are going to be tier 3, I guess, I don't necessarily see this being played, so I would put this like in the rare category. Rare category to tier 3 category. Okay, next up we got Raven form. Wow, this card has some power, and it's a common. 3 mana sorcery in blue. Exile target artifact or creature. Its controller creates a 1/1 bluebird creature token with flying. And you can foretell for 1 blue. So foretell, you pay 2 on any other turn, and then later you pay 1 blue. This card, for me, is definitely tier 1. It's a common tier 1 card. It's absolutely amazing. First, you exile the creature or an artifact, and both of these are very, very relevant right now in the meta. First, creature is obvious. Creature is going to be obvious in every meta. And artifact is relevant because we got great Henges, we got Embercleaves in the meta. Like, just these 2 effects on 3 mana sorcery is already fine. Sure, your opponent gets a 1/1 bird, but who cares, right? And it gets even better. You can just, on turn 2, you foretell for 2, you have nothing else to do. And then later you just pay 1 mana to reduce a huge threat. This card is absolutely amazingly good. Put it in any control deck that has blue. It's really, really powerful, so this is definitely tier 1 for me. Next up, the Trickster God's Heist. 4 mana in Dimir colors, it's a saga. Lower counter 1, you may exchange control of 2 target creatures. Now this already is super interesting and super fun. I think it's already going to make for some tilt moments for your opponent. But let's just read out the whole card, right? Lower counter 2, you may exchange control of 2 target non-basic, non-creature permanents that share a card type. And then lower counter 3, target player loses free life and you gain free life. So a lot is going on, right? Obviously you want to play this in control decks. Now, the first challenge I see with this card is lore counter 1. If you play this in a control deck, you somehow need to have a bad creature on your side. But how do control decks generate bad creatures? I don't know. Another option would be maybe you could play this in like a Dimir deck, which is actually aggressive and has like small creatures and wants to sacrifice stuff. I don't know. But that's the first challenge I see. you yourself need a bad creature in order to steal something valuable from your opponent, right? So that's the first thing. So the first counter might be a bit challenging, but it's one of those things where I can definitely see if you know how to build your deck properly, and if there is going to be enough support for this card, then the first low counter already seems to be very, very good. Especially because you pay 4 mana, and you have an immediate effect on the board, which helps you defend from your opponent, right? That's what you want as a control deck. Helps you defend, you take their biggest creature, you gain yourself a threat, which can also defend on the following opponent's turn. Lore counter 2. This one is interesting. You can exchange non-basic lands, which, you know, exchange your Yulmon land for a Crawling Barrens that's already stacked with 1/1 counters. That seems really, really good. Or one of the cards we're going to see later is the World Tree, which is a new non-basic land. Maybe you want to steal that. So a lot of applications there. Also, you can, you know, let's say you play some kind of Yorion Esper deck. You have your Omens of the Sea lying around. You play this, and then you exchange your Omen of the Sea for, I don't know, a huge enchantment from your opponent. So a lot of applications there. Lore counter 2 I think is really, really good, and notably almost all of the time works without this requirement that lore counter 1 is. And then the third lore counter is just nice, right? It's not like game-breakingly good, but your opponent loses life and you gain life. That's what you want as a control player. So speaking of tiers, where do we have it? There we go. Speaking of tiers, I think this card could be a tier 2 card. I could see this being played in tier 2 control decks. It might be tier 3, but I have big hopes for this card. We haven't seen all the cards yet from the expansion, first, and secondly, I think it's just one of these cards where players will just need some time to figure out how to use it properly, and if they do, it's going to be very powerful. So I'm optimistic about the saga. That's why I'm putting it in the tier 2 category. Next up, we got Path to the World Tree. 2-mana enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library. And then you can pay 2 and Woobird and sacrifice it, and the following stuff happens. You gain 2 life and draw 2 cards. Target opponent loses 2 life. Path to the World Tree deals 2 damage to up to 1 target creature. You create a 2/2 green bear creature token. So, a lot going on. A lot is going on. First up, I would first like to value this card only for the first effect. 2 mana, get a land from your deck. It's basically what you pay for Birth of Meletis. However, Birth of Meletis also has 2 more effects than that. Right, so 2 mana already doesn't seem too great. And then for the second effect can see play in 5-color decks, or let's say decks that want to play cards that require 5 colors, which is, I think, more accurate because later in this video I'm going to show you the World Tree, which lets you, just drain all kinds of mana with basically 0 downside. So you might put this card into that deck, but that being said, I think this card is not going to be any good. So I can see this card being played in like jank decks together with the World Tree, and that's why I'm putting it in the jank category. Next up, we got Tyvar Kel. Oh yes, our final Planeswalker of the set. They said there are going to be a total of 4 Planeswalkers, and it's the 4th one. So Tyvar Kel, that's our Elf Tribal Planeswalker. 4 mana in green, comes in with 3 loyalty, and has the static effect, as you control have tap, add black mana. Okay. +1, put a 1/1 counter on up to 1 target elf. Untap it. It gains Death Touch until end of turn. For 0 loyalty, create a 1/1 green elf for a creature token, and -6, you get an emblem with whenever you cast an elf spell, it gains haste on end of turn, and you draw 2 cards. So, now this card, the first time I read through this card, my first reaction was, the loyalty abilities don't seem to be that great, right? 4 mana, comes down, +1, okay, you get a 1/1 counter, Death Touch, or you can make a warrior token. But upon further examination, I think this card might be one of the reasons why Elf Tribal may go beyond tier 3 Tribal. And the reason is, in creature tribal decks, your strategy is usually to be aggressive, right? And the problem with Planeswalkers is usually that, sure, Planeswalkers have an immediate effect on the board because of their loyalty abilities, but if you would play a creature for the same mana cost, you would have a bigger immediate effect on the board, right? Planeswalkers are more of a long-term investment, so to say. But this Planeswalker doesn't have this downside because of the following reason. So you play your Elf Tribal deck, right? It's turn 4, you have 4 mana, and let's say you have 3 elves on the board, which I think is actually conservative. I expect elves to be able to put more tokens on the board. We've already seen a 2 mana elf that can enable you to do that. So let's say you have 3 elves on the board. You play your Tyvar for 4 mana, and because of its static ability, you immediately have 3 mana available again, 3 black mana. And this means that you can play your Tyvar, have almost no loss in tempo because you can tap your 3 elves to generate 3 black mana. And if you wish, you can even use the +1 of Tyvar to untap one of those elves to get a total of 4 mana. And then you have 4 mana available to play another creature, which means that on one turn, you played a Planeswalker, used a loyalty ability of a Planeswalker, and got a 3 or 4 mana creature into play. Which is, it's just, like, tempo-wise is amazingly good. And then the turn after, you untap and you had no tempo loss, but you now have a Planeswalker in play. So that's why I think this Planeswalker here in Elf Tribal is absolutely amazingly good. And the only, barrier this Planeswalker is having is how good is Elf Tribal going to be? How good are the elves we are going to receive? That's really like the only challenge for this. So, because of this challenge, I'm going to put Tyvar in the tier 3 category. But really, it only depends on how good are the other elves going to be that we're going to see in the set. It's going to depend solely on that fact, whether this card is going to be better. And if Elf Tribal is going to be tier 2, then this card is also going to be tier 2. So, very good Planeswalker. Next up, we got a dual model card here, which is called Vori God of Kinship. So, another god in green for 4 mana 2/4, and as long as you control 4 more legendary creatures, Vori gets +4/+2 and has Vigilance. And you can pay 2 and tap her to look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a legendary creature card from among them and put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in the random order. And the other side of the card is Ringheart Crest, which is a legendary artifact for 2 mana. And as the Ringheart Crest enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. And the crest, you can tap it for green mana, but spend this mana only to cast a creature spell of the chosen type or a legendary creature spell. So this card already hints something about legendary tribal in a way. And first off, just what I want to say, what's positive about this card. You can play this, you can basically put 4 of these into your deck, and very early you just play the artifact to ramp yourself. I think that's really cool. And then later down the road, you can get a big creature, right? If you have 3 legendary creatures on board. This is a 6/6 with Vigilance for 4 mana, so that's very, very good. and she can fetch you cards. You can attack with her and then tap her to fetch you cards, which is pretty good. That being said, everything depends on, is Legendary Tribal going to be a thing? And also Legendary Tribal has just this natural challenge of you want to make your deck consistent, right? So put multiple copies of Legendary creatures in your deck. But then again, if you have multiple copies, you can only ever play one of those copies on the battlefield. So that's why this card is nice, because it's dual modal. So you can sometimes circumvent this problem by playing the artifact side of this card. That being said, I think we just don't know enough yet to evaluate this card for Legendary Tribal. But my gut feelings tells me that it's not going to be that great. So I would put this like in rare play category, maximum tier 3 category, but yeah, I actually put it in tier 4. I'm going so far to say this is going to be a tier 4 deck. Next up we got Hailstorm Valkyrie, 4 mana in black, 2/2, Angel Wizard. It's a snow creature with flying and trample. You can pay 2 snow to give it +2/+2 until end of turn. Seems okay in draft. In constructed, it's going to see 0 play. So let's put it in the last category. Next up we got Sculptor of Winter, 2 mana 2/2, snow creature, elf rogue. Tap, untap target snowland. No. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to see constructed play. However, to be fair, it's an elf. So I don't know. It's an elf, but we've already seen a better elf at 2 mana, so this would probably mess up your elf curve. And because of that, I'll put it in the no play category. Where do we have it? There we go. 0 play. Alright. Next up, we got Cosmo's Charter, another rare. 4 mana, 3/3 Horse Spirit in blue with flash and flying. And foretelling cards from your hand costs 1 less and can be done on any player's turn. Now, to be exact about this, what this means, because I had to think about it a bit. What this means is that the 2 mana you play to foretell a card, or basically put it into exile, this is going to be reduced by 1. So then it only costs 1 and you can do it on any player's turn instead of just during your turn. And this card itself has a foretell of 2 and a blue. So first off, 4 mana 3/3 flash and flying is pretty decent. That being said, for me, from my impression that I have, foretell is really a control type of keyword. And I don't know if in a control deck you want to run a 4 mana 3/3 creature that reduces the foretell cost of your cards, because I just don't think it's going to be necessary. At the same time, is there going to be some kind of aggressive foretell deck? I just don't see it. I think this card is just solid in a way, right? With its mana cost, it's just flying creature for 3/3 flash with flash, and has a upside even. So because I think this card is just solid, but I don't see a world or like a deck where this could see being played. So because of that, I'm going to put this into the tier 4 category. I think it belongs there. I don't think it even belongs in tier 3. So I put it in tier 4. Next up, we've got Coma's Faithful, a 3 mana 3/1 elf cleric with lifelink. When Coma's Faithful dies, each player moves 3 cards. One of the first black elves we see, but this is going to see 0 play in constructed. I don't need to evaluate this. Next up, Village Rise, a reprint. We already have this in standard. Village Rise sees play in tier 3 decks, in cleric trial decks, so this again is just going to be a tier 3 card. Where do we have it? There it is. Just a tier 3 card. Very solid for decks that just fit it, right? Next time we got Seize the Spoils. 2 and a red for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast spell, discard a card, and draw 2 cards and create a treasure token. So this is a poor man's Pirate's Pillage. Pirate's Pillage is actually here. Pirate's Pillage is 4 mana and creates 2 treasure tokens instead of 1. I think this is a decent card. We can expect to see more treasure synergies in Kaldheim, in the rest of the cards. And just in general, I mean, treasures are just good, right? They're never bad in any meta in a way, because, you know, it's just extra mana. You're always happy about that. I just don't know in what kind of deck this would go. I don't see this being played in like a, you know, this dwarf treasure deck, because it's too much of a tempo loss there. This card is very interesting if you can somehow copy it, because if you copy it, you just pay the cost of a card once, right? So if you copy it, you don't have to discard another card, and then it generates treasure tokens, which is really cool. But I think this card is solid. That being said, I don't see this being played in any type of deck, so I think it's going to see 0 planes constructed. Next up we got another mythic, another dual model mythic. It's Ezika, God of the Tree. Legendary creature god, 3 mana 1/4 with vigilance. Can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. And other legendary creatures you control have vigilance and tap at 1 mana of any color. So this goes in the same direction as our other legendary creature god that has this legendary creature theme. Synergizes well with this. And on the dual model side, it's the Prismatic Bridge, a legendary enchantment for Wooburg. And at the beginning of your upkeep, reveal cards from top of your library until you reveal a creature or planeswalker card. Put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in the random order. Now, I would put this card in the same category as the other card before. I think it's going to be some kind of jank deck. I don't expect this to be any good, because while the effect of Prismatic Bridge is very powerful, it doesn't do anything the turn it comes down. And, you know, we have Elspeth Congress Staff in the meta. So this gets quite easily removed. That being said, the effect is very powerful indeed. And the fact that it also tutors Planeswalker cards is really cool. So I might use this card for like a Super Friends deck. But I think the type of deck this goes into is at best going to be janky. So I'll put this into the tier 4 category. Where do I have it? There you go. Tier 4. Actually, I have to make sure I put this in the same category. Oh, no, we that was wrong. We missed one. Let me quickly get to that. There we go. We missed the big one here. It's Coma, Cosmo, Serpent. Now this card is so bonkers. Okay, Simic colors, 7 mana. 3 colors, 2 green, 2 blue. Okay, legendary creature Serpent. This spell can be countered. So already, you know, you love to see this text on a high CMC card, because you don't want to get these cards countered. At the beginning of each upkeep, so also your opponent's upkeep, create a 3/3 blue Serpent creature token named Coma's Coil. And then activate ability, sacrifice another Serpent, choose one. Tap target permanent. Its activated abilities can be activated this turn. And Coma causes Serpent gains indestructible until end of turn. Now this card is so bonkers good. This card is a win condition in itself. It builds your board for free. It can protect itself by making itself indestructible. And it can also, you know, let's say your opponent plays an Ugin. And I might be wrong here, but I think this is the way it works. Let's say you play your Coma on your turn, right? And your opponent freaks out because obviously he needs to remove it somehow. And it's 7 mana, right? So you can play an Ugin for 8 and -7 Ugin to remove this. And I think the way it works is if your opponent activates Planeswalker ability. If you then sack in response your Serpent and you target a permanent, the ability won't get activated. However, using my example, I just realized your Ujin would, just kill itself by -7/7ing itself, so it couldn't be targeted. So that's a bad example, but I think that's how it works. I think how it works is that you can, in response to Planeswalker abilities, you can sack a Serpent and then basically make it so that the Planeswalker ability doesn't resolve. So very powerful. You can also activate the ability. So it doesn't apply to trigger abilities, but I know what else activated abilities are there out there right now. I'm thinking of like Maze Mine Tomes, of Crawling Barrens, right? You can really pin your opponent down, and every upkeep you get a 3/3 which protects your Serpent, or you can control your opponent. So I'm really looking forward to this card. I don't think it's busted or anything. You know, we have extinction events out there, and the turn it comes down, you're likely going to be tapped out. So your opponent can just remove this, right? Because you don't have a Serpent yet. But I really have high hopes for this. This can go in Sultai control. Maybe there's going to be some kind of Simic control even with extra turns. This sounds really, really cool. I love it already. So, is this a tier 1 card? Question mark. I actually think it's going to be tier 2. Because it's still 7 mana. I could see this being played in like a Genesis Ultimatum deck, right? It would fit right in there. So this might be tier 1, but I'm actually cautious here. I think this is a tier 2 kind of card. Alright, we got there. The World Tree. So the World Tree got a card, which is really cool. It's a land, and it's not a legendary land, which is kind of a flavor fail in a way. But it's not legendary, so you can have 4 of these on the battlefield. Just go ahead. Let's read the card. The World Tree enters the battlefield tapped. Okay, you can add a green. So that's just the land, right? As long as you control 6 or more lands you control have tap at 1 mana of any color. Now, this is a chromatic lantern type effect on a land. On a land that you can have 4 of on the battlefield. So I think just this static effect means that as long as Kaldheim is going to be in standard for the next 2 years forward, basically, you'll have a very easy time to build multiple color decks, because, you know, it's not that hard in the right decks to get 6 lands on the battlefield. And then you can play any colors, right? You can just say, you could really just go ahead and say, I'm mono green, I'm putting all the ramp in there, together with the World Tree, and then I have multicolor cards in there. So just because of this, I think this card is good because of this. And then you have this activated ability where you have to pay double Wooburg and sack it. So in total it's actually 11 mana, because the World Tree itself, you can't tap it, you have to sack it to tap it. Search your library for any number of God cards, put them onto the battlefield, and shuffle your library. Now right away I want to say I think the activated ability is absolutely irrelevant, and it won't be of any matter to standard constructed, not at all. It's 11 mana. 11 mana is a lot. And then you get to put god creatures out there. Now we're sure to see more gods even in Kaldheim. We have those gods from Fearless Beyond Death. But even if you do, I mean, the nice thing is you can activate it at instant speed, and then you have all your gods out, but it's really hard for me to imagine a deck which is stuffed full of gods, and then your win condition is the World Tree. I just don't think this is relevant in a way. I think the important part of the World Tree is that it's not legendary, so you can have 4 of these on the battlefield, which means that you can consistently draw it in your deck, and drawing a second one is not a downside. And then the actual important effect of this card is the Chromatic Lantern static effect, which allows for so much creative deck building down the road with multiple colors that I would say this card is a tier 3 card, because as I said, I think the activated ability is really irrelevant for standard. And then the question is, how important, so to say, is it to have the World Tree static effect, right? So that's why I'm putting it in the tier 3 category, because you might not need it for all kinds of decks, but if if there's somehow going to be a card which lets you tutor a land card from deck, not a basic land card, just a land card, so with which you can easily get this into your hand, this allows for a lot of creative deck building. You can really just go mono green with ramp, and then put any colors in there and just make crazy combos or anything. So because of that, I'm putting the Volt in tier 3, and might even be tier 2, but I want to be cautious about this. My gut feeling is actually telling me tier 2, but I'm leaving it at tier 3 at the moment. Next up, we got Furia, Judge of Valor. 5 mana, 2/4, legendary creature and cleric with flying lifelink. And whenever you cast your second spell each turn, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. So it's a cleric, it's an angel, both are tribes. So clerics already have good support from Zendikar Rising, and angel is getting more support in Kaldheim. But on face value, 5 mana for 2/4 flying lifelink for potential card down the road, I don't think is worth it. So I think this is going to see 0 playing constructed, just because it's too expensive for the cost. 0 play. Next up, Tormentor Cell. 1 red for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. Whenever a equipped creature becomes blocked, it deals 1 damage to defending player. And equip cost of 1. This is going to see 0 play in constructed, even if, like we know that there's going to be a lot of equipment synergies in Kaldheim, like you get extra benefits, you have a lot of equipment on board. But at 1 mana, for example, you have your Shadow Spear, which is like 10 times better. So this is going to see 0 play in constructed. 0 play. Next we have Blizzard Fight. 1 green for a snow sorcery. 2-star creature that you control and target creature you don't control. If you control 3 or more snow permanents, the creature you control gains +1/+0 and indestructible at the end of turn. Then the creature fights target creature you don't control. Because we have Primal Might, which I think is just straight up better than this, this is going to see 0 play in constructed. 0 play. Next up we got Awaken the Trolls. 4 red green for a saga, so 6 mana in total in rule colors. Lower counter 1, destroy target land. Okay, lower counter 2. Put target land from graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. From a graveyard, you can also choose opponent's graveyard. And low counter 3, choose target opponent. If they control less lands than you, create 4/4 warrior Tor creature tokens with reach. I was told from the comments down below this is supposed to say trample. The translation is wrong. So 4/4 warrior troll creature with trample equal to the difference in lands to your opponent, right? So the way this works is you play this for 6 mana, boom, destroy one of your opponent's lands. Second lower counter, grab that land, if you will, from your opponent's graveyard. So basically ram for on. And then on 3, let's say you control 10 lands and your opponent controls 6 lands. The difference is 4, so you create 4/4 warrior troll creature tokens with trample. Yeah, first of all, I love this card. I think it's really, really cool. That being said, it's just too expensive and too slow for standard constructed. I could maybe just seeing played in like a Genesis Ultimatum deck. Apart from that, I think it's going to see some janky play, because I think this card is super cool and really flavory. Because like the moment you you put like an army of trolls on the battlefield, that's really, really cool. But it's just too costly and slow for standard, so I would put this into the tier 4 category. Janky. Next up, Iron Verdict. 3 mana in white, instant. Iron Verdict is 5 damage target type creature, and you can foretell for 1 white. 0 play in constructed, even with the foretell feature. It's just that at a total of 3 mana, you have so many good options in white. You have Banishing Light, you have Skyclave Apparition, which just take the slot better. I mean, foretell allows for more diverse kind of play patterns, to be fair, but it's going to see 0 play and constructed. 0 play. Next up, we got another god. It's Tergrid, Goddess of Dread, together with Tergrid's Lantern. 5 mana, 4/5 legendary creature god with Menace. And I'm gonna rephrase this because the translation is a bit clunky. So, whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you can put that card from your graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Actually, the translation is quite nice. And then, on the other side, we have Tergrid's Lantern. You can tap it, and the effect is target player loses 3 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. And you can pay 4 to untap the Lantern. I absolutely love this card. I absolutely love this. So if you see my last video, I made a Rakdos sacrifice, Rakdos discard deck. This card would go right in there as like a 2-of. So first off, the Lantern part is pretty powerful. You know, like in a control discard deck, every turn you tap it, your opponent loses 3 life. And if you have mana to spare, you can untap it, do it again. And if you play discard tribal with Kroxa and your Lilianas, your goal is that your opponent has at most 1 card in hand and maybe just 0. And if your opponent has 0 cards in hand, he just loses 3 life or sacrifices creatures or planeswalkers or enchantments. So I absolutely love this card, and then the creature effect in the discard deck can really just win you the game. You just, fetch those permanent cards right back from your opponent's graveyard. So I personally absolutely love this card. I think it's really strong in the discard deck, and we already seen like hand disruption decks support with the Tibalt Planeswalker, for example. So I'm really excited about this card because it fits right into my Rakdos discard deck. That being said, the card is very expensive, and this card Rakdos deck I think is like a tier 3 deck. So because of that, I'm putting this in tier 3 category. But I think it's very powerful. If Rakdos discard ever goes up in ranks, this is going right in there with it. So I think this is tier 3 with a lot of upside potential. I really love this. And the card before the last card is Doomscar Oracle, 3 mana, 3/2 human cleric. Whenever you cast second spell each turn, you gain 2 life, and you can foretell for 1 white mana. 0 plane constructed, even with foretell. No doubt about that. And last card is actually Juice card. Saw It Coming. 3 mana for instant counter target spell. So it's just I think it's called cancel, right? Just a generic counter spell. But you can foretell for 1 in the blue. So you can pay 2 mana up front, and then later have a 2 mana counter anything. I think this card is very powerful, a very good counter spell. I think in control heavy decks, we choose counter spells. This goes in for like a 2-of. And yeah, it's just very, very good. The fact that you can, you pay a bit more up front in a way to have a 2 mana counter spell later with no downside, like no restrictions, is very good. So I put this in like tier 2. I think this is going to see a lot of play. And last thing I still have here, the Snow Basic, but yeah, Snow Basic is, I don't need to rate it. It's just a land, basic land. If you have a Snow deck, it goes in there. So yeah, that's it for January 6th and 7th. Tomorrow I'm going to evaluate the spoiler cards of today, January 9th, when we've all seen all of them. And I hope you guys enjoyed the approach with the tier list. I think this is really cool to, you know, have some overview, get some feelings for the card. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I keep you guys updated.